Get everybody in. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Oh, just about afternoon. We're right at noon here. Welcome to this Anderson's Bookshop virtual author event with the one and only John Grisham. We're so glad to have all of you with us today. As a reminder, please leave your audio and your video off so we can focus on our presenters and our speakers today. Thank you so much for taking the time to keep your eyes on yet another screen to talk books with us. Anderson's, for those of you who may not be familiar with us, Anderson's Bookshop is an independent bookstore. We've been owned and run by the Anderson family for going on 6 generations now. We've been saying throughout this year that we've already survived one pandemic because we were indeed around in 1918. So we're going to get through this one too. But these are strange times indeed. So your support is really, really personal to us. We just very much appreciate it. And we'd like to take a second to thank you for that. Joining us today is one of the co-owners of the bookstore, Becky Anderson, who is going to be in conversation. So hi, Becky.
Hi. Hey, everybody. And thanks, John, for being here.
Yes. So normally we would be doing this event in person with over 400 that we normally do during normal times, BC, before COVID, as we call it. We're hoping this virtual style can kind of tie us over till we can be together again in person, but it's nice to see faces. John was here just a couple of years ago, and we're really happy to have him back. I would be remiss if I did not note that we are doing lots of virtual events for all ages and interests and topics. So please follow us online to find out the things that are coming up. A couple of things just this week. We have Vivian Howard tomorrow, Elizabeth Berg on Wednesday, and the week after the election, when we're all really going to need it, J.M. Hirsch is going to teach us how to make cocktails. So do follow us online if that sounds like something that's up your alley. But of course, today we are so happy to have John back with us. So welcome, John. Thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here, guys. Always fun.
Yeah, and congratulations on the release of A Time for Mercy.
Thank you.
Very exciting.
Doing well.
And I'll let you and Becky have a great conversation. I'll be back in a little bit.
All right. Well, John, I just want to start off by thanking you for supporting independent bookstores. I know you've been a big supporter through your whole career, but I know you had something on your website and you released that in May, but thank you for all that support because we can really use it right now in this environment and going forward. So thank you for that. With A Time for Mercy, this is your 47th book. I don't know, maybe I got the numbers wrong, who knows? But, you've published so many books, but also, the 7 Theodore Boone books for young adults, which is such a great series, and, nonfiction and other stuff as well, and short stories. But this is the 29th book to hit the #1 spot on the New York Times. So that's awesome, just awesome. And it just hit the Times just this past week. But it's the 3rd novel with Jake Brugance in it. And I was wondering, when you wrote A Time to Kill, which was your first novel, and then you wrote Sycamore Road, which I know you wrote in 2013, and now you're back to the same town and the same characters, which are just absolutely brilliant, unforgettable characters. What's it like going back to characters and things that you've had these big hiatuses in between?
Well, A Time to Kill came out in '89,
right.
And it was to say it was a flop is to understate its response. It didn't sell anything, and I was very disappointed by that because I worked on it for 3 years, and it was my first novel. It was very autobiographical, and it had all the great Southern Gothic stuff I love and courtroom stuff I love, and I was kind of living that life as a young lawyer, and I was so excited when the book came out, and just so eager to go to bookstores. And one reason I still love independent bookstores is that back then it was hard to get in bookstores because I was unknown, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there were 5 bookstores that not only welcomed me but had big signings, and we sold a bunch of books, and they became friends. And they're still friends, and I still go back there, still sign books all these years later. So the independents early on stepped up big time and helped me in ways that other bookstores did not. So I'm very loyal. But anyway, A Time to Kill came out, and it was, it didn't sell, and I was a very busy lawyer, and trying to make a living doing that. I didn't have a whole lot of time to write. I was tired of losing sleep, getting up early to write A Time to Kill, and I told my wife, I said, I'm going to do this one more time, one more story, one more book. And if the second book doesn't work, you can forget this little secret career. I'm going to go. I'll just be a lawyer. I'll just keep suing people. That's what I'm supposed to do as a lawyer. And so I didn't know what the expectations were with A Time to Kill. I did not plan to go back, but when the firm came out, it was a big success overnight. It happened fast. And so Doubleday and Common Sense told me to keep writing the legal thrillers, the one after the other. And I did for 15 years after that. And I never thought about, I always thought about Jake. I always thought about Clanton, Ford County. That's where I'm from. That's home for me. That's the rural South. I know those people and the history and the customs and religion and food and culture and music and everything about that area. And it's always fun to go back there and with a story that will work there. A lot of stories will not work there. And I didn't mean to go 24 years before Sycamore Row, before bringing Jake back in 2013. But when we did, he proved to be very, very popular. And I think Matthew McConaughey had something to do with that. So after 2013, after Sycamore Row, I said, I am not going to wait 24 years again before I bring Jake back. But I had to find the right story, and I found it about 3 years ago. And that's why Jake is back now with A Time for Mercy.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. On your website, there's a great clip from Matthew McConaughey, and he reads part of A Time for Mercy. And he thanks your wife, Renee, for helping him get that role. And I know you've thanked Renee, your wife, for encouraging you to not stop writing, because I know you were discouraged at the beginning. So Matthew McConaughey, and I don't know if there's any movie in the works, but this would be, but I think he has cherished that role and really is grateful to you for all the success he has as well.
It's a really funny story. And I talked to Matthew about a month ago for the first time in 25 years. 24 years. Once the movie came out in 96, and when the early movies were made, we would go to the set and meet everybody, take the kids and have lunch and hang out. And, but once the movie's done, they break and they go back to Hollywood or wherever, and you never see them again. And so it's hard to maintain any kind of relationship with them because nobody really tries. And we were all friends and all that. So I hadn't talked to Matthew in many years, and we were on a Zoom program about a month ago, and we both told the story of how it all happened. And it was a great story because in 1996, they were ready to start filming in Mississippi with a cast that included Samuel Jackson, Kiefer Sutherland, Sandra Bullock, Donald Sutherland, Kevin Spacey, Ashley Judd, just wonderful cast. Oliver Platt. They had a great script that I had read. I liked the script. Joel Schumacher was a director. Warner Brothers was writing checks. It was all, it was a done deal, except they didn't have a star. They didn't have Jake. And we had gone through this process. In the contract, I retained the right to veto casting for Jake. And it wasn't my fault. They had approached every big actor in Hollywood, some great ones, and offered them the role. They all said no. They were all busy elsewhere. And then they came up with a couple of people that I just could not see in a Southern courtroom with a coat and tie on, trying to fake a Southern accent. So I said, no, I'm going to veto. Anyway, things were getting pretty heated. The lawyers were involved, and my lawyer kept saying, we have the right to approve the casting of Jake. And so in the midst of all this upheaval, Joel Schumacher, to his credit, and he was great about this, he said, hey, time out. I have somebody in mind. He asked me, he said, did you see a movie called Dazed and Confused? And I said, no, I didn't see that. He said, okay, there's a young actor in that movie with enormous potential, and he's unknown, and I think he'll do. And I said, well, you want to trust this big role to an unknown actor? He said, yeah. He said, let me get him in for a screen test, and I'll send you the video. And he did. And we were waiting on the video. It was the old cassette, VHF, whatever, big tapes. And suddenly there was Matthew on the screen, and my wife and I were the only two watching the screen test. And when Renee saw him, she said, I think I'm in love. That's the reaction most women have when they meet Matthew. And but there he was. There he was. He was brilliant. He had, he was cool. He was handsome. He had the Southern accent, and he was as an actor, he was fearless. And we said sure. And actually, the fact that he was so unknown became part of the story that fueled the buzz, because you had this big movie, big book, big cast, big budget with an unknown actor as the lead. And that became the story. So it just all worked at the same time, and he pulled it off beautifully.
Yeah, he couldn't have been more perfectly cast. You guys did a great job with that. A Time for Mercy, and it's autobiographical for you personally, because, in the book, Jake is trying to settle a case for a wrongful death on the railroad, and you left writing to go back to practice law for a similar type of case. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It goes even deeper than that.
Okay.
It goes a lot deeper than that. When I'd been practicing law about 3 years, 1984, I think it was. And suddenly I had this railroad case. It involved two people who had been killed at a crossing, a terrible crossing late at night. And I had the case, and it was going to be the case that, my biggest case ever. And I was not even 30 years old. And, I had it, and I filed the lawsuit, and I took off, and I committed every spare minute I could to working up this lawsuit. I was determined to take the case to trial in federal court as a 30-year-old rookie lawyer, not cocky, but confident and getting a big verdict. I just wanted that to launch my career as a big-time trial lawyer. That's what I wanted to do. And so I had the case. It's very similar to the case you read about in A Time for Mercy. Now, I'm not going to tell you what happened in A Time for Mercy, because I don't want to spoil the.
No spoilers.
But Jake got caught doing something he shouldn't have done in the civil trial. He got bounced out of court, and that did not happen to me. But there were some things that happened with the rules and ethics that were not exactly honorable on my end. So anyway, I lived through that case. We tried the case in federal court when I was 30 years old, and we settled the case the fourth day of the trial, and it was a big settlement. And so everybody won. The client won. Everybody was happy with the settlement. But there was a secret there that I carried with me for years and years and years, and nobody ever knew about it. So I'm not going to claim this what happened in A Time for Mercy, but it's a big subplot, because you realize Jake is not above, improper behavior. He's not above breaking a rule, a procedure that he doesn't agree with, and he gets burned because of it. So it's a nice subplot, and I tied up at the end because the end gives you some hope that Jake is not going to starve to death.
Right. Good. That he and Hannah and his wife won't starve in the book. Your story, you were such a storyteller, and I'm always amazed at the characters, the place, everything that you create, the fodder that you get for these stories. And the South, we have Clanton, we have Ford County, that are fictional places, but are based on real places, I'm sure, or amalgamation of something. So what is it about the South, or where you grew up, and the stories you've heard, whether when you were a legislator or whether a lawyer or wherever it is, or just the towns themselves, the fodder is so fantastic for these stories. Where do you gather all that together?
Well, the question has been asked many times. Why is that state, Mississippi, produced so many writers? Why has the South produced so many noted writers? I've always believed it's because of the tragic history. There's been so much suffering there. Anytime you have a lot of suffering and tragedy, and you have great fiction. When you have people who are mistreated and poor and stepped on, and you have conflict. You have great fiction, and so that's one reason I think we have a lot of storytellers from the South. At the same time, Scott Turow is one of my favorite writers, and when he's in Kendall County writing, as he did a few months ago with The Last Trial, a great book, I'm there. I'm in Chicago. I'm in Cook County. I'm in Chicago. When Scott's writing about the judges, the lawyers, the police, the characters, that's his turf. And when I'm reading Scott Turow in Chicago or Kendall County, I'm there. So I think any good writer can take the reader. I grew up reading Louis L'Amour and all the great Westerns. I was there. Okay. Yeah. That's what writers do. They can take you somewhere else and to a place you haven't been, and you escape for a while. So that's what I try to do.
Yeah. Oh, my husband read Louis L'Amour, a ton of his books when he was a teenager. He loved them. So I noticed that A Time for Mercy is dedicated to Sonny Maeda, who was the editor-in-chief and the head of Knopf Doubleday at Penguin Random House, the largest U.S. publisher. And he's quoted as saying about you, John Grisham is one of the greatest storytellers of all time. And I remember at some point, because I know you collect first editions of Southern writers, and I was there at Sonny's place in New York when he presented you with a first edition of The Great Gatsby, because everything that happens in one of your books with some of that. And I just wanted to know how was Sonny influencing you in your career?
Well, I can't say. I came to Sonny later in my career, and it wasn't by choice. Sonny ran Knopf for 30 plus years, and he was the legendary publisher of this great house that's was known for its really literary works, the great writers, the great literary artists, not necessarily popular guys like me or commercial genre writers like me. So that was not Sonny's forte, although Sonny had a lot of bestsellers. And about 10 years ago, Random House reshuffled the deck with its corporation, with its many imprints, far too many imprints, like most publishers, and they put Doubleday under Knopf. And so Doubleday is my publisher, has been from the firm in 1991, and hopefully always will be, because I have people there, friends I've had for 25 years with Doubleday, and I have just a great team there. We're all friends. We all know each other, and we all love each other. It's a very, very strong group. And so, but Doubleday kind of got wedged into Sonny's territory. And Sonny really didn't ask for me. I didn't ask for Sonny, but we had a lot of respect for each other. And Sonny was great to me. He was always supportive. He always read the manuscripts when they got there and passed along a note or two. And he was really a principal guy to me. And I said, we were not that close because we didn't have to be that close, because I had a different editor somewhere else. But he's just such a legendary character. And over the years, I've got to know other people who knew him very well, and other writers who knew him very well, but especially the other people he worked with at Knopf, and they just, adored the guy. And so I thought it would be a nice touch to mention Sonny. That party you mentioned was at his apartment on Park Avenue, which is, got to be one of the greatest apartments in the world. And we were publishing a book called Camino Island. Came out in June of 2017, 3 years ago. And the story revolves around stolen manuscripts, the stolen F. Scott Fitzgerald manuscripts. And I got the idea because I love to collect rare books, first editions of 20th century American authors. Some are rare, some are not, but that's kind of what I like to collect. And I made the statement, I'd made the statement earlier to some people, my friends at Doubleday, that the one book I didn't have of Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald only published 5 novels. And his most famous one, of course, is Gatsby, but it wasn't famous when he published it in 1925. It was not a big novel, and it became bigger. It's legendary now. And I said, I made the statement, I have yet to find a good first edition of The Great Gatsby. Well, they wrote that down, and they ran to Sonny, and they told Sonny, and Sonny being Sonny, he said, go out and find one and spend the money. So at the party you're talking about, when we were there, we had all these great booksellers from all over North America, the greatest bookstores, yours and 20 or 30 others for this party. And Sonny whipped out a copy of The Great Gatsby first edition. He gave it to me, and I got choked up. I mean, I was visibly choked up. My wife and daughter were there. I mean, I had my family there, and I couldn't believe I'd gotten a copy of The Great Gatsby, and Sonny had pulled this surprise on me. So It was a
That
big
was,
moment.
yeah, it was. It was wonderful to be there. You know, going back to A Time for Mercy, your characters are always so great, but Drew Gamble and the way you portray him, he's a 16-year-old boy and he's been accused of killing a sheriff deputy and is going to be on trial. And without any spoilers, we don't want to say too much, but I was just wondering about talking about juveniles and children and the justice system and seeing, this is 1990, but thinking how things have progressed for juveniles. And I know you stand up for so much in the legal system for the inequities. Have you seen it change? Because I know you're writing as 1990 what it is, but what have you seen in the changes for juveniles?
It's a very, very tough issue to deal with because you're talking about teenagers who pull the trigger, and the victim is just as dead, regardless of how old the gunman happened to be. And I set the book in 1990 for several reasons. I wanted to get, the pre-digital era. And there were a couple of times as I was writing where I had Jake sending emails, and I would stop and say, wait a minute, this is 1990. We didn't have emails till 1995. But I wanted to use 1990 because in 1990, throughout the death belt and your death states, it was not unusual at all to put 16, 17-year-old kids on trial for capital murder and find them guilty and sentence them to death or life without parole. The Supreme Court stopped that about 10 years ago. It said that you can no longer put a juvenile on trial for capital murder. And then in one decision, then the court came back later and said you can no longer sentence a teenager, someone under the age of 18, to life without parole, because that is a death sentence. So the law has changed dramatically, but there are still a lot of teenagers in prison who are serving long sentences, and it was not uncommon in 1990 the issue here, and I don't explore it, pose the question here without answering it. What do you do with teenage murderers? What's the appropriate punishment? How's the system? Because I make the point in the book, he's 16. If you take him through youth court at the age of 18, jurisdiction ends and he walks out free after 2 years in prison. Is that fair? It doesn't seem fair to me. So it's a tough issue that I'm still struggling with it, and I'll probably go back and visit it again one of these days.
Yeah. And I know you've been a big part and on the board of the Innocence Project. And I know the nonfiction piece you wrote, The Innocent Man, Murder and Justice in a Small Town, was a powerful example of injustice. And just wondering your involvement with the Innocence Project and how that influences your writing when you're writing about these injustices and writing stories. And because this book really read like it was such a narrative piece of nonfiction, it read like a thriller.
Yeah, it had a profound impact on me and my career when I wrote that book 15 years ago, because it's obviously the only true story I've written. So I had to do a lot of research, and the research, this guy, Ron Williamson, went to death row in Oklahoma in 1987, and after about 5 years was given his death warrant, and 6 years, it came within 5 days of being executed for a murder he had nothing to do with. And but just because of a federal judge who had the courage to step in and stop it, that saved his life. Once I got into the research of that book, I began realizing how many innocent people are in prison, and there are a lot of them. And if you got innocent people in prison, you need to expose all kinds of problems with the criminal justice system. It brings up all these different issues. And so I jumped in the middle of that 15 years ago. And since then, have written a lot of books about issues, death penalty, mass incarceration, judicial elections. A lot of issues that I'm still pursuing stories. I'm still thinking about these issues that I want to write about. But The Innocent Man, I think, marked a change in my writing.
Yeah. You know, I know you're involved in the Innocence Project. I know you have some other things or charitable causes that you're passionate about. And I know one of your newer ones is No Kid Hungry, trying to solve childhood hunger issues. But also, you know, your continuous support and passion for baseball, because I know you really wanted to be a professional baseball player. So I want to know, is it the Rays or the Dodgers? Okay. Anyway, but just wondering, you've built some Little League fields and you're the local Little League commissioner, which is so cool. So tell us a little bit about those other passions you have.
Well, I'm the commissioner because I own the baseball park. I built it. Okay, I would love to give it to somebody else because I get to pay for it every year. But it's a wonderful ballpark. It's just around the corner from our property. We live kind of out in the boondocks, and we moved there 26 years ago in the Central Virginia. I realized there were no ball fields around where we lived. You had to drive 25 minutes into town to play on a ball field that wasn't that good, in a part of town that wasn't that good. And so I thought, these kids are not playing baseball or softball or t-ball because there are no fields. So I got mad and I built my own ballpark. And we have 7 fields. Each year we have between 350 and 500 kids playing on 35 teams. And yeah, I'm the commissioner. And it's really sad this year. This is the first year in 24 years that we didn't have baseball. And to go to the ballpark every day and not hear all the kids playing with their parents cheering, it was really odd. So a year without baseball has been pretty bad for me.
Yeah.
World Series, I'm always a National League guy, so I almost always pull for the National League team. So I'm for the Dodgers.
Okay.
I had a great time at Wrigley. Calico Joe is my only baseball novel. Came out about 8 or 9 years ago, and it's about a guy who played for the Cubs. It's all fiction, and they invited me. Scott Turow got involved, and he invited me to come to Wrigley to throw out the first pitch, and I got to sing "Take Me Out to the Ballpark" with Ernie Banks. And when I was a kid, I had all the Ernie Banks cards. I had all the cards, but I'm a Cardinal fan, but I always loved the Cubs too. And so I got to sing with Ernie Banks, and neither one of us can carry a tune. And with that, you know, it doesn't matter at Wrigley Field. You just sing as loud as you can.
That's right. That's right.
That was a highlight for me. I kept my Cubs jacket and my Cubs cap, and I still pull for the Cubs.
Oh, wonderful. And I know you have some news. I heard about Calico Joe. Can you talk about that?
Do we have time for a quick story? Okay.
Quick story, and then we'll do questions. So.
Okay. This happened about 2 months ago. In the middle of the summertime on a Saturday afternoon, my agent called and he said, you'll never guess who wants to buy Calico Joe to adapt to film. And I said, surprise me. Well, we'd already been through 2 movie deals that expired, options expired. I own the rights. And he said, Bob Dylan read Calico Joe when it came out, and he called like 8 years ago to see if he could buy the film rights, and the film rights had been optioned, so they weren't available. So the years go by. He called again this summer and said he wants to adapt Calico Joe. And I thought he was a singer. He said, well, he is a singer, but he also likes to do movies. I said, sure, let's do it. Let's have some fun. So Dylan evidently does not mess around. He called George Clooney and talked George into I think writing and directing. I'm not sure if he's going to star in the movie, but anyway, George Clooney's involved. So the press release two weeks ago was Bob Dylan, George Clooney, and John Grisham all are going to make Calico. It's not a bad group of guys to hang around with. So I've not met Bob Dylan. I've never met George Clooney. We talked on the phone. George Clooney bought the rights for Innocent Man 15 years ago. It didn't work out. And we talked on the phone a couple times then. I've never met him. So I got to meet these guys pretty soon. Maybe we'll get to make a baseball movie.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So, Ginny, you want to take it away with some questions from everybody?
Yeah, we've got some questions from the chat here that I'll share with you. So a little while ago, Junie asked, if they make a movie for A Time to Mercy, will you try to get Matthew McConaughey again? Is that why you called him up after 25 years?
I didn't call him. We met virtually because his book just came out. Matthew just published a book. I think a week after I published Mercy, or a week before. And so he's sort of doing the book thing too. And it was somebody's idea to get us on together. The truth is, if Matthew wants to do the movie, he can do it, and the movie's going to get made. It's that simple. If he doesn't want to do it, it still may get made, but it'll take a lot longer. But he's Matthew McConaughey. If he wants to do the movie, and I say yes, Warner Brothers will get it done. So I hope that happens.
Certainly. Okay. Then we've got a process question here for you. Do you know from near the beginning of the writing process if the ending will be happy and satisfying or unhappy / conflicting?
I know what the ending is going to be. One of my rules for writing popular fiction is never write the first scene until you know the last scene. I worry constantly if my ending is going to be satisfactory. I worry, is it going to be conflicting? Is it going to be believable? Is it going to be, I worry about that. Even though I know the ending, I worry about it. I worry about everything when I write the book,
Okay. We have several fans with us who are fans of Gray's Mountain and are wondering if there is a sequel on the way at all. They're wanting to learn specifically about the fate of those characters.
There's no sequel. There's no sequel planned, but that's one of the few books that I've written where there could be a sequel. So it's something I do think about, because when the story ends, our heroine is still in Appalachia, and we're not sure she's going to leave, and she has some, some pretty deep roots there, and it's fun to go back and write another story in that locale. It's a very rich, complicated, layered, conflicted region, coal country, and there's a lot of good drama there. So I think about her all the time.
Well, it sounds like there's demand for it. So if our readers have any say, it's going to move up onto your list. Someone else is wondering if you're going to keep writing Camino books.
Yes, there is. By the time I finished the first one and published it in 2017, I had really become fond of those characters, the setting, the island, and just the subject matter. Books, rare books. The hero owns a bookstore, and he makes tons of money, and it's fiction, okay? But he loves ladies and likes to party, and he's a big reader. So it's Bruce Cable. Bruce Cable is the guy I created, and he's become a very lovable character. By the time I finished the first one, I knew I'd go back for another one, and so I had a story that became Camino Wins, came out this year. And I went to Doubleday after the first one and said, okay, I've got at least two more books from the Camino series. So there was a 2-book contract, Wins being the first of the next two. So the third is under contract. So it's got to be written and published probably in a couple of years or so. So yeah, I'm thinking of the story now.
Oh, excellent. So we have that to look forward to. That's great news.
Yeah.
So Jen is with us today. She is a third year law student at Ole Miss, and she says, I participated in the Innocence Project clinic last fall. I was wondering more about your involvement with the Innocence Project and if you've considered writing other nonfiction stories based on some of those clients' stories.
I think about it every day because I still see a lot of innocence cases. I'm working on not officially working on, but I'm trying to help 3 or 4 guys right now get out, innocent people, in my opinion, innocent people, because they're clients of the Innocence Project, or they have representation. We're convinced they're innocent. We're trying to get them out, and I'm pen pals with several of the guys I met over the years who are still in prison. We can't get them out, and luckily pen pals with a couple of guys who have gotten out, or 3 or 4 of them actually. So yeah, that's kind of what I do for fun. Even though it's not always fun work. We started the Innocence Project clinic at the Ole Miss Law School probably 12 years ago. My son went to law school there, and my son was in that clinic, and he went to death row. One of his clients was Eddie Lee Howard, the guy who's been on death row in Mississippi for 25 years. And my son worked on that case, and then he graduated and came back to Virginia and became a lawyer. But point is, Eddie Lee Howard got a new trial a couple of months ago, and the charges may even be dismissed. But he's been claiming to be innocent since the very beginning, and most folks believe him after serving 25 years. So anyway, it's good for you. Law students love the Innocence Project legal clinics at almost every law school. It's great work. Congratulations for doing that.
That's amazing. Another question is, how can people be more involved as individuals who are not lawyers with the Innocence Project? There are things we can do.
There are about 50 Innocence Projects across the country. There's the one big Innocence Project founded by Peter Neufeld and Barry Scheck in New York. It's 25 years old now, and it's kind of like the main office. There are no franchises. Anybody can start an Innocence Project. Most of them are attached to law schools. Ole Miss. One of the best projects is at Northwestern in Chicago. And Rob Warden has been getting innocent people out for years and just doing great work. So there are a lot of these warriors around the country who start their own innocence group and get some funding and take up the cases are there. If you want to volunteer, try to find a local Innocence Project. They'd love to have you help. The best thing to do is find a guy in prison and write him a letter. Or two or three, just write, find somebody who has a strong innocence claim and just write a letter. I mean, you have no idea what a letter means to somebody in prison, guilty or innocent, to be honest. But to think that somebody on the outside believes in you and is willing to study your case and to advocate you. And I've talked to a lot of exonerees over the years once they get out. And they're fun to talk to because a lot of them couldn't read very well when they went in. And for 10, 15, 20 years, all they do is read. They become very well-read and they, some enjoy my books. But I talked to a guy one time who was in Massachusetts and he served for like 19 years. Nobody was listening to him and nobody believed him. And he got a letter one day from a young lawyer with some innocence group. And he said that letter saved his life because for the first time in years, there was somebody out here who was willing to write him, listen to him, study his case, advocate for him. And she got him out. It took about 3 or 4 years to get him out. She walked him out of prison. And that is a thrill that most lawyers don't get to have.
Wow.
Wow. That's the power of hope and the power of the written word right there, Well, and a little bit of a lighter note, I think we can kind of wrap up here. Somebody would like to know what's your favorite book that you wrote and the favorite book by another author that is not a legal thriller. We're going to make you name names.
I have trouble picking favorites because I have to love all these stories to get to finish them, to live with them for 6 or 8 months and just become consumed in these other worlds. I have to really love the people. A Time to Kill will always be my favorite, I guess, because it was the first. It's very autobiographical. It's from home. It's where I'm from, and Jake is always going to be my alter ego. And so I guess A Time to Kill. A favorite book it's not a legal thriller. I'm trying to think of something I've read lately. When I was in high school, I had the benefit of some really strong English teachers, and one of them forced us at gunpoint to read great literature. But when I started reading the novels of John Steinbeck, I just really have always he's been my favorite writer. And when I read Grapes of Wrath, I said, this is one special book.
Okay.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we are wrapping up on our time. Do you guys have anything else you would like to wrap up with before we go? I know you've got some other commitments today, John. We're glad for the time you have.
Well, I got a couple of book questions for you. This is sort of a quick little lightning round. Okay. What was your favorite book when you were a kid, when you were young?
The first book I recall just loving was The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain.
Ah, okay. All right. And what about something that you shared with your own kids? Do you remember something that you would read with them that they enjoyed and has stayed with you as well?
My own kids. No, but my grandson was at home over the weekend. He's 4 years old, and we read about 8 books every night. And I have become pretty much an expert on the current state of literary affairs for 4-year-old kids. And so I know some of these. There's one series called The Pout Pout Fish. I don't know, you probably haven't read that. I think it's a huge bestseller.
Oh, they're great.
But,
they're great.
yeah, but the writer is really, really good. The Pout Pout Fish is my favorite.
Okay, The Pout Pout Fish. And I always ask a lot of authors in this, have you ever faked reading a book? You know?
Fake it in that claim you read it when
Read
you
it,
did.
you know, like maybe in high school or something like that, you know?
Oh, I'm sure I did in high school. Sure. Yeah. Listen, I was a jock in high school, and thought I was going to play some sport. It didn't matter which one. I was going to be great at a higher level, and I was not concerned about academic matters when I was in high school. And when I got to college, I knew I was going to college, but I was not a serious student until halfway through. When I was 20 years old, and I realized, I can't just keep partying like this. I got to grow up at some point. And, it comes later for some people, but the light went off and I said, okay, I've got to start studying, and I'm going to law school. So, no, I'm sure I faked every book. The first 2 years of college, I'm sure I did.
Well, the usual answer is Moby Dick. I get that a lot. So I just want to.
Absolutely. I did. I fake read Moby Dick for sure.
And then that last question, John, is one I didn't ask you earlier. Was you have stated that you would not have become a writer if it wasn't that you hadn't been a lawyer first. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, writing was not something I ever dreamed of doing until I was 30. It was not, I never thought about taking a course in creative writing, or I just, that was not something. I love reading. I loved fiction. I loved to, I had my favorite writers and all that. And I was really ambitious at the age of 30. I was ambitiously pursuing this dream of becoming a courtroom lawyer. That was where I wanted to. I wanted to be a big time trial lawyer with big cases and big bucks and all that. And so I wasn't thinking about writing. And then I was in a courtroom one day and saw some very dramatic testimony, and I couldn't shake it off. I kept thinking about it. What if these facts changed, and what if this became a big trial, and what if I were the lawyer in the middle of it? So this whole drama just grew and grew and grew. And finally I said, I'm going to try to write this. I'm going to try to write this story, this horrible crime, this young lawyer, this powerful courtroom drama, and that's how it all started. If I had not been in that, if I had not seen that, if I hadn't been a lawyer, again, I wasn't thinking about writing. Maybe it would have come along later if I'd done something else. I don't know, but I don't think so.
Yeah, well, we're glad you became a lawyer first. So we'll just say that. And also, I just want to thank everyone that we've all joined together in the cloud. And let's hope the next time, John, you come see us, we'll do it in person. So
I can't wait.
All right.
Yes, we can't wait either.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, for being with us.
Thank you so
If you
much.
ordered a signed book, those are available for pickup starting tomorrow, and we'll start shipping those out to you if you're not nearby us as well. So thanks so much for your time. Everybody,
Thank you.
happy reading. Stay well out there.
Take
Thank
care.
you so much. Thanks, John. Bye-bye.
Thanks, John. Bye-bye.
Bye.